Sociological explanations Sociological explanations of crime causation. What are cultural deviance theories? Strain theory attributes criminal behavior in the United States to the striving of all citizens to conform with the conventional values of the middle class, primarily financial success. Cultural deviance theories attribute crime to be a set of values peculiar to the lower class. Conformity with the lower class value system, which determines behavior in slum areas, causes conflict with society's laws. Both strain and cultural deviance theories locate the causes of crime in the disadvantageous position of those at the lowest stratum in a class based society. Scholars who view crime as resulting from cultural values that permit or even demand behavior in violation of the law are called cultural deviance theorists. The three major cultural deviance theories are: number one, social disorganization; number two, differential association; number three, and cultural conflict. What is the social disorganization theory? Social disorganization theory focuses on the development of high crime areas in which there is a disintegration of conventional values caused by rapid industrialization, increased immigration, and urbanization. What is the cultural conflict theory? Cultural conflict theory states that different groups learn different conduct, norms, rules governing behavior, and that the conduct norms of some groups may clash with conventional middle class rules. What is the nature of cultural deviance? Sociologists define deviance as any behavior that members of a social group define as violating their norms. Cultural deviance theorists argue that our society is made up of various groups and subgroups, each with its own standards of right and wrong. Behavior considered normal in one group may be considered deviant by another. As a result, those who conform to the standards of cultures considered are behaving in accordance with their own norms, but may be breaking the law, the norms of the dominant culture. Social disorganization theory. Scholars associated with the University of Chicago in the 1920s became interested in socially disorganized Chicago neighborhoods where criminal values and traditions replaced conventional ones and were transmitted from one generation to the next. In their classic work, The Polish Peasant in Europe and America, W.I. Thomas and Florian Zinnicki described the difficulties Polish peasants experienced when they left their rural world life to settle in an industrialized city in the New York. The scholars compared the conditions the immigrants had left in Poland with those they found in Chicago. They also investigate immigrants' assimilation. Older immigrants they found were not greatly affected by the move because they managed, even within the urban slums, to continue living as they had lived in Poland. But the second generation did not grow up on polished farms. These people were city dwellers and they were American. They had few of the old world tradition but were not yet assimilated into the new ones. The norms of the stable, homogeneous folk society were not transferable to the anonymous, materially oriented urban settings. Rates of crime and delinquency rose. Thomas and Zenicki attributed this result to social disorganization. The breakdown of effective social bonds, family and behaviorhood and neighborhood associations, and social controls in neighborhoods and communities. What is the Park and Burgess model? Robert Park and Ernest Burgess, who advanced the study of social disorganization by introducing ecological analysis into the study of human society. Ecology is the study of plants and animals in relation to each other and to their natural habitat, the place where they live and grow. Ecologists study these interrelationships, how the balance of nature continues, and how organisms survive. Much the same approach is used by scholars who study human ecology. The interrelationships of people and their environment. In their study of social disorganization, Park and Burgess examined area characteristics instead of criminals for explanations of high crime rates. They developed the idea of natural urban areas consisting of concentric zones extending out from the downtown central business district to the commuter zone at the fringes of the city. Each zone had its own structure and organization, its own cultural characteristics and unique inhabitants. What is Shaw and McKay's work? Clifford Shaw and Henry McKay, two researchers at Chicago's Institute for Juvenile Research, were particularly interested in the model Burgess had created to demonstrate how people were distributed spatially in the process of urban growth. They decided to use the model to investigate the relationship between crime rates and various zones of Chicago. Their data found in 55998 juvenile court records covering a period of 33 years from 1900 to 1933 indicated the following. Number 1. Crime rates were differentially distributed throughout the city, and areas of high crime rates had high rates of other community problems such as truancy, mental disorders, and infant mortality. Number 2, most delinquency occurred in the areas nearest the central business district and decreased with distance from the center. Number 3. Some areas consistently suffer high delinquency rates regardless of the ethnic makeup of the population. Number 4. High delinquency areas were characterized by a high percentage of immigrants, non whites, and low income families, and a low percentage of home ownership. Number 5. In high delinquency areas, there was a general acceptance of non conventional norms, but these norms competed with conventional ones held by some of the inhabitants. Shaw and Mackay demonstrated that the highest rates of delinquency persisted in the same areas of Chicago over the extended period from 1900 to 1933, even though the ethnic composition changes. This finding led to the conclusion that the crucial factor was not ethnicity, but rather the position of the group in terms of economic status and cultural values. Finally, through their study of three sets of Cook County Juvenile Courts records 1900 to 1906, 1917 to 1923, and 1927 to 1933, they learned that older boys were associated with younger boys in various offenses and that the same techniques for committing delinquent acts had been passed on through the years. The evidence clearly indicated to them that delinquency was socially learned behavior transmitted from one generation to the next in disorganized urban areas. This phenomenon is called cultural transmission. Tests of social disorganization theory. Douglas Smith looked at police behavior and characteristics of 60 neighborhoods in three large US cities. His major findings suggest that police officers are less likely to file reports of crime incidents in high crime areas than in low crime areas, and that they are more likely to assist residents and initiate contacts with suspicious looking people in low crime neighborhoods. Evaluation Social Disorganization Theory. Number 1. Why do delinquents stop committing crime as they grow older? Number 2. Why do most people in socially disorganized areas not commit criminal acts? Number 3. Why do some bad neighborhoods seem to be insulated from crime? Number 4. Critics claim that his approach has not come to grips with middle class delinquency. Modern criminology owes a debt to social disorganization theorists, particularly to Shaw and Mackay, who in the 1920s began to look at the characteristics of people and places and to relate both to crime. They have stimulated research not only in crime causation but also in crime prevention. What is the differential association theory? Many years ago, hunters captured a young boy living with a flock of ostriches. He had grown up with them, run with them as fast as they did, acted on their signals, and adopted their feeding habits. He could not speak like a human, but he communicated perfectly with his ostrich family using their sounds. He had learned the ways of his group just as we learn the ways of ours. What we eat, what we say, what we believe, in fact, the way we respond to any situation depends on the culture in which we have been reared. In other words, to a very large extent, the social influences that people encounter determine their behavior. Whether a person becomes law abiding or criminal then depends on contacts with criminal values, attitudes, definitions, and behavior patterns. This proposition underlines one of the most important theories of the crime causation in American criminology, differential association. Sutherland's theory. In 1939, Edwin Sutherland introduced differential association theory in his textbook Principles of Criminology. The theory states that crime is learned through social interaction. People come into constant contact with definitions favorable to violations of law and definitions unfavorable to violations of law. The ratio of these definitions, criminal or non criminal, determines whether a person will engage in criminal behavior. In formulating this theory, Sutherland relied heavily on Shaw and McKay's findings that delinquent values are transmitted within a community or group from one generation to the next. Sutherland's 9 propositions. 9 propositions explained the process by which this transmission of values takes place. Number 1, criminal behavior is learned. Number 2, criminal behavior is learned in interaction with other persons in a process of communication. A person does not become a criminal simply by living in a criminal environment. Crime is learned by participation with others in verbal and non-verbal communications. Number 3. The principal part of the learning of criminal behavior occurs within intimate personal groups. Families and friends have the most influence on the learning of deviant behavior. Their communications far outweigh those of the mass media. Number 4. When criminal behavior is learned, the learning includes 4a. Techniques of committing the crime, which are sometimes very complicated, sometimes very simple, and 4b. The specific direction of motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitudes. Young delinquents learn not only how to shoplift, crack a safe, pick a lock, or roll a joint, but also how to rationalize and defend their actions. One safecracker accompanied another safecracker for 1 year before he cracked his first safe. In other words, criminals too learn skill and gain experience. Number 5. The specific direction of motives and drives is learned from definitions of the legal codes as favorable or unfavorable. In some societies, an individual is surrounded by persons who invariably define the legal codes as rules to be observed, while in others, he or she is surrounded by persons whose definitions are favorable to the violation of the legal codes. Not everyone in our society agrees that the laws should be obeyed. Some people define them as unimportant. In American society, where definitions are mixed, we have a culture conflict in relation to legal codes. Number 6. A person becomes delinquent because of an excess of definitions favorable to violation of law over definitions unfavorable to violation of law. This is the key principle of differential association. In other words, learning criminal behavior is not simply a matter of associating with bad companions. Rather, learning criminal behavior depends on how many definitions we learn that are favorable to law violation as opposed to those that are unfavorable to law violation. Number 7. Differential associations may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. The extent to which associations and definitions will result in criminality is related to the frequency of contacts, their duration, and their meaning to the individual. Number 8. The process of learning criminal behavior by associating with criminal and anti criminal patterns involves all the mechanisms that are involved in any other learning. Learning criminal behavior patterns is very much like learning conventional behavior patterns and is not simply a matter of observation and imitation. Number 9. While criminal behavior is an expression of general needs and values, it is not explained by those general needs and values, since non criminal behavior is an expression of the same needs and values. Shoplifters steal to get what they want. The motives, frustration, desire to accumulate goods or social status, low self esteem, and the like cannot logically be the same because they explain both lawful and criminal behavior. Evaluation. Differential association theory. The theory does not tell us how the first criminal became a criminal. Thank you for listening.